Hey, if you'd like to earn CEUs for this webinar, join the Safeopedia community at the link in the description below. Now, on to the show.
Hello and a warm welcome to everyone. We would like to wish everyone a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Samantha from Safeopedia, and here at Safeopedia, it is our mission to support the EHS professionals, operational folks, and any safety-minded individuals with free safety information, tools, and education. I'd like to extend a huge thank you to the dedicated professionals for the great work they do on a daily basis in keeping our workplaces safe. Today, we are proud to present Combating Cold Stress on the Job Site, Essential Safety Strategies and Solutions. The Safeopedia webinar has been made possible today by Ergodyne, a preferred manufacturer member of AD Safety Network. AD, together we win. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you today's presenter, Claudia Weber. Today, Claudia is going to cover the critical risks posed by cold-related illness, how to identify symptoms, and the proven strategies to mitigate these hazards. I'm very excited to have you all sit back, relax, and enjoy this presentation. With that, Claudia, let's jump into it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Samantha. As Samantha mentioned, my name is Claudia Weber. I've been working at Ergodyne for just over 3 years now, and I've worked in all areas from heat stress to cold stress, just trying to find ways to make workers their most comfortable while they're working hard day in and day out. And so I'm the one who develops and designs the products from the ground up. And so today, as Samantha mentioned, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about just understanding the dangers of cold stress and how it impacts workers, what to look for and how to identify it, and then strategies to prevent cold stress. So whether that's a work rest schedule, layering systems, and I kind of have it presented where there's a few questions that I will answer and just things to look for and what PPE that I would recommend to you. So first, I'm going to go into just a little bit about the risk and some facts you may or may not be familiar with. So heat stress, I feel like is a very, very big conversation at the beginning of the year. And as we get towards our winter months, cold stress does creep up upon us. And so here's just a stat to know. There were 380 worker injuries and 3 fatalities due to cold exposure in 2022. And this is according to the BLS. So you'll note this is a year delayed. That's normal because it takes an extra year for the BLS to release those stats. And this is mostly due to hypothermia, frostbite, or overexertion. So those are the main injuries and risks involved in cold stress. So what is cold stress? So basically, when your body can no longer control its internal temperature and it starts to fail, that's when cold stress has creeped up upon you. You'll see 2 different temperatures of which you want to be aware of. So once your body temperature falls below 98.6, cold stress has begun to affect the body, but serious illnesses and injuries and, bodily tissue damage can occur at that 95 degrees Fahrenheit, that internal body temperature. So that's when you really want to be wary and get medical attention. I think this graph is great. It just shows what your body does when it gets cold. I'm sure all of you know when you get cold, your body's reaction is to shiver and have your muscles contract to try to warm yourself up. What's happening is all the blood is moving away from your outer extremities and to protect your major vital organs. So your brain, your heart, your lungs, and that leaves the outer parts of your body susceptible. So as you probably imagine, the first thing that you feel is your fingertips get really cold, your toes get cold, your ears, and that is very normal, but those are the things we want to try to control through proper PPE. You can see on that far right image, all of your legs, your arms, your ears are blue because that's, what happens when you get really cold. And also, it leaves your skin exposed and at risk. So some symptoms to look for. So whether this is you on the job site, your buddy, these are just things you want to be looking for of yourself and everybody around you. Some are more obvious than others. So I would say if you have cold and blue skin, that's a little bit more obvious if you're intensely shivering. But some are not as obvious. So maybe your breathing is a little bit more uncontrolled. It's not a normal heart rate. Maybe your heart rate is slowing down. Or maybe it's really fast and then all of a sudden really slow. You could be a little bit confused. Maybe you're saying things that don't make sense. Maybe the person next to you is saying things that just sound a little bit odd. They could be a little bit less coordinated. So we talk about, hypothermia and frostbite, but slips, trips, and falls are also a major problem as it starts getting cold outside. And this is due to sometimes the loss of coordination where people just, miss a step or aren't paying as much attention. And enlarged pupils is also a symptom to look for if somebody is experiencing cold stress. So I'm going to go into just some of the ones we've talked about earlier: frostbite, hypothermia, and dehydration, just trying to hone in on those three things to focus on. So frostbite essentially causes the skin and the underlying tissues to freeze. Your hands and your feet are more susceptible to developing frostbite, as you probably know. So what you want to do is, if you are experiencing this or somebody else is get the individual to a warm location, but do it gradually. And I stress gradually because you don't want to damage the underlying tissues even more by forcing them into an extremely warm bath, for an example. You don't want to rub or massage the frostbitten area. The tissues under the skin, they've crystallized, and if you rub them too much, they will break down further and cause worse injury. And don't use a heating pad or a heat lamp or other heat because those areas can be numb and they can actually be easily burned and you don't realize it in the moment. And I guess I should talk what you should do. You want to move them to a warm area, place the extremities in warm water, just not hot water, wrap them in a blanket, and seek medical attention if it's severe. Next, hypothermia. This is a more severe issue that can happen if somebody is in the cold for too long. So our body functions at 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, and hypothermia sets in when your body dips below 95 degrees Fahrenheit. So your cognitive abilities can decrease, you can be confused, your speech can be slurred, and even in severe cases, some people hallucinate. And there are varying degrees of hypothermia. So for a more mild case, you want to move that person into a warm area, have them stay active, drink warm water or a warm drink to help. But as the symptoms get more and more severe, it's really important to seek medical personnel and get them, out of their situation that they're working in. The key here is you just don't want somebody to get to that most severe case. You want to be watching for those signs and symptoms as they're getting worse and try to stop it as soon as you can and make sure they're taking more breaks. And lastly, dehydration. So I think it's a common thing that when it's summer or when it's hot, we know we need to drink water. We know we need to stay hydrated. But when you're cold, it's not as top of mind, and people often can become dehydrated. And so you want to make sure when you're working, you're losing fluids. So continue to drink water or electrolytes, and that just keeps you going for your whole shift. And the recommended is drinking 5 to 7 ounces every, 20 minutes throughout the day. I did also want to discuss, so I think hypothermia and frostbite are those things that people think about when they first think of cold stress, but they might not think of just what it does if you're cold throughout the entire shift, and it can make your productivity decline. So the ideal temperature to work in is, of course, ideal. It's 68 to 72 degrees Fahrenheit. That doesn't happen for most people. Typically, it's either much hotter or it's much colder. And so we have to work through that. But if the temperatures do fall too low, there are some risks involved. Mental fog is one of them. It's harder for a worker to focus on complex tasks. And it's just really hard to concentrate if they're cold the entire day. Productivity can also decrease. So they say productivity declines more than 1% for every degree below 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So again, it's really important to take those breaks and take those times to keep yourself warm throughout the day. And errors also increase. So Cornell did a study and found workers in colder environments do make more errors and lead to a 10% increase in labor cost. So again, there are some more subtle things that happen to workers that aren't just hypothermia or frostbite. So who is at risk? Well, really, it can be a lot of different workers. It can be you just on the weekend, but we're talking more on the job site. It can be outdoor and indoor workers. So indoor workers, it can affect food processing, cold storage, beverage and brewing, versus outdoor workers, maybe a little bit more obvious is people working in construction, agriculture, transportation, public services, anyone who's working in the cold. I threw this image up on here because I think it's so powerful. I was in a cold storage facility where it was -20 degrees, and this guy has all the PPE on. He has jacket, a hat, balaclava, etc. And you can see the icicles forming on his eyelashes, and it's just so powerful how cold it can really get. And if you're not wearing PPE, how much faster you can get colder. And so it's just really important, again, to wear the right products and to take the correct amount of breaks. So now that we kind of talked about what cold stress is and how it can affect the body, I want to talk into different causative factors. So there are environmental risks as well as personal risks involved in cold stress. So environmental risks are the ones you feel instantly when it hits your face, that high wind speed, if the air is damp, if there's just cold air that you're working in. So you always hear it's -5, but with a wind chill, it's -20. So it feels even colder than it is. Another environmental risk is if you're working without proper PPE. So you're working outside and you have no gloves on, you have no boots on. And if you're working with cold water or cold surfaces, so let's say you're working with metals, and those get much colder much faster. Personal risks is super, super important. And I always try to focus on this a lot, is person A and person B working in the exact same environment, wearing the exact same PPE might feel different because of their bodily factors. So if they have an illness, maybe one has hypertension versus the other doesn't, they are going to feel different in the same environment. I mentioned dehydration. It's super important to stay hydrated throughout the day. Also, just your age, your weight, and your fitness level play an important part. So somebody who is older or who is overweight is actually more at risk for cold stress. Somebody who is under the influence of drugs and alcohol is also more at risk. So it's important for you watching yourself in this environment, as well as looking at your friends around you or other safety professionals, is knowing that a hand warmer might work for one person, but it might not work for another person. So you want to kind of cater what you're wearing based on how you feel. And lastly, acclimatization is also critical. So if let's just say you've worked or lived in Florida your entire life, and you recently got a job where I live in Minnesota in the dead of winter, it is not smart to go out in the cold, in the snow for an 8-hour shift when you're not used to that environment. You want to slowly adapt yourself into the new environment that you're in, or acclimatize yourself. So there is a schedule that you can follow where you start maybe day one doing 1 to 2 hours outside, and then you increase the duration that you are in that environment once your body is fully acclimated. That can also be if you are working in the mountains, for example, you're not used to that type of air, you want to acclimate yourself. So just to sum that up, it's important to know that everyone is different and they may feel cold stress differently than the person next to you. So moving on, talk about regulations, standards, and best practices that circulate around cold stress. So first off, what does OSHA require when it comes to cold stress? OSHA does not have any regulation around cold stress, nor do they have any special campaigns like they do heat stress, for example, the NAP. If there's a cold stress incident, they will fall back on the general duty clause, which means employers must provide their employees with a workplace free of any hazards that are likely to cause death or serious harm. OSHA also has a guidance that they recommend for workers that are working in cold environments. So the guidance is using the icons on the right, bundle up and wear 3 layers of protection. It's important that you wear multiple layers and, remove them as you're getting warm. Wear a face covering, accessories to cover the face, the mouth, and the ears. insulated gloves to protect the hands, and then insulated and waterproof boots to protect the feet. So those are what OSHA recommends to keep their workers safe. Training and education is also key to prevent cold stress and cold-related illnesses. With proper knowledge and the correct PPE, cold stress is 100% preventable, so it does not need to happen to anybody. Something that I like to try to stress, and if it's possible, is scheduling workers in the warmest times of the day. So that would be the daytime or the afternoon. So trying to avoid that really early morning shift or the late night shift, because that is when it's the coldest. Using relief workers or extra workers for those really long and demanding jobs. And if possible, schedule outdoor maintenance for warmer months, but we all know that's not always possible. And giving workers extra time off or just saying take a break when you need to is nice, especially when it's during the coldest months of the year. Okay, so I've talked about what cold stress is, what to look for, the signs and the symptoms. So now I'm going to go into just a few questions that people may have and what PPE I would recommend, because it is critical to stay prepared before winter hits. I really want to focus on that, is you don't want to have a time where incidents occur because you didn't have the correct PPE available. So I'm going to go through some of the products that we have at Ergodyne. And I will say, as I mentioned, I'm from Minnesota, so we've been doing this quite a long time, and we have everything from jackets to accessories. So feel free afterwards, if you have any questions, send them my way. So one question is, what do I need to wear if it is extremely cold in the morning and warmer in the middle of the day? So I mentioned this a little bit, but layering is critical because in the morning it is much colder. So you want to first start with a base layer, which I'm going to show you on the next slide. That is the first layer of protection. We have a mid-weight and a lightweight base layer, just depending on the environment that you're working in. The key here is you don't want to have an extremely tight spandex layer that's again, really, really tight on your skin. You want to have some sort of a gap in between your skin and the base layer just so you can trap the heat. So just depending on which one would work best for you, that is the first layer of defense. And then you can have a mid layer. So this is typically a hoodie, a sweatshirt, something that you have at home. Some options that we have is a heated vest. So this is a really great option in those extremely cold conditions to have something tight against your body and have the heated elements on the back of your neck, on your back, and on your chest. Or you could just wear a sweatshirt, totally up to a preference. And then your third layer is your outerwear. So this is your jacket, something that is waterproof, has that extra insulation to keep you warm. We do have 3 black options available. The one on the far right has a Sherpa lining versus the one on the left in the middle are more of your traditional black jackets. So this is also, if you get too hot, you just remove that mid layer or remove the jacket and continue to work throughout the day. The base layer will obviously stay on because that is a moisture wicking and pulls sweat away from your body. So we want to keep that on. The next question is, how do I keep myself warm and also seen by traffic or people? So you may be working in conditions where you need that class 2 or class 3, that extra visibility. So the black just might not be enough. We have plenty of options available that have the reflective tape on them. So you'll see a few different choices. We have everything from rain jackets all the way to a really, really warm winter parka. So this would be appropriate, again, if you're working in those conditions that you just need that extra visibility. And we don't want to forget about bibs. You can't leave your legs going too cold. So sometimes jeans is just not enough, or whatever pant that you're wearing. Bibs is a great option, again, that you can layer with or take off if it gets too warm. We have some that are high vis and some that are black. One of my favorite features in the 6471 is it has removable knee pads as well. So if you are on your knees throughout the day or you need a kneeling pad, this one already has them directly into the bibs. And they are fully adjustable as well with the straps. Next question is, I need to keep my head warm while also having a hard hat compatible option. What are my choices? So if you're familiar with wearing a hard hat, if you wear it directly in your head, typically in the summer you start sweating because it's directly on your scalp versus in the winter, it just gets too cold. That plastic is not very warm. So I would definitely recommend a thermal liner. What's really nice about these is they have hard hat anchor points. So you just use that hook and loop in the back and on the sides and put it right into the hard hat suspension system. And they're evenly placed throughout so that it can fit in just about any hard hat or safety helmet. They also have pockets on the inside that you can put hand warmers. So if your ears are getting too cold, it's a great option. And some of them come with additional face masks. So if you want your face fully covered, you can do that. As I mentioned, this is perfect for those of you who wear hard hats throughout the day. And here's just a quick look at all of the different thermal liners we have. We have a lot of options. Focusing a little bit on that third column, we have FR liners as well. So if you're working in fire resistant opportunities, maybe you need a Cat 2 or Cat 3 liner, we have those available. And speaking of FR, maybe you need protection from arc flash while you're working outside. What do I do? So that is another layer involved, is not only are you experiencing cold stress, but you could experience some sort of arc flash and you need an FR liner or accessory. We have a few here. So we have 3 liners, a hat, and 2 balaclavas. And I will mention our 6847 balaclava is dual compliant. So that is for arc flash and flash fire. But I will say I've done my fair research on FR products and a lot of them are not comfortable and they're really scratchy. Ours are extremely comfortable, warm, and also really do protect against flash fires and arc flash, depending on which one you choose. And also I'd like to touch on a lot of people out there have liners or accessories for this, for these standards that focus more on using FR, I'd say coatings, and coatings are actually not the way to go because they can get washed out and wear down. So ours are using a monocrylic cotton material. And so it will always be intrinsically FR, just based on the yarns that we use. And I've done many demos in the past where I show the difference between FR treatments versus inherently FR materials. And I always recommend spending the money to get inherent FR, which is all of our products that we have. So I have workers or myself working in many different climates. So potentially, like I said, someone's in Florida, someone's in the Midwest, someone's out on the East Coast or the West Coast or just all over the world. Are there full face coverings for different climates? So this is really important when I talked about everyone might feel differently, just depending on the climate they're working in, or they individually might run cold or might run hot. So I think it's not always a one size fits all. We have a mild option for a balaclava, so that's using more spandex. We have a cold option. This is a fleece balaclava versus on the far right, an extreme option. So if you are working in those really, really cold environments, that might be the best for you. It's using hot rocks. So it's an inhalation system that pushes hot air back at you. So key here is one size does not fit all. It's best to sample the product and figure out what works best for you. Really quickly, I did also want to mention we came out with a fleece balaclava that uses eco-friendly materials, so post-consumer recycled materials. It's made of 95% recycled polyester. So if that is important to you as well, we have an option for that. And it's the same level of warmth. We touched on hard hats, so I wanted to touch on bump caps as well. So are there hats that are bump cap compatible? Yes. If you've ever felt a bump cap directly on your head, this also can get pretty cold in the winter. The plastic does not stay very warm. And so we have 3 great options that actually unzip and house the bump cap inside. So there's a layer of a soft material directly on your head that's housing the bump cap. We have a balaclava, a knit beanie, as well as a trapper hat. again, great option if you need to wear a bump cap and you don't want it directly on your head. Are accessories part of the ANSI 107 standard? And what if I want extra visibility? So accessories are not a part of the standard. You saw the jackets that we had in the beginning of this presentation. Those, of course, do have to meet the standard, but accessories do not. So truly, this is for the extra visibility, which I always recommend. Sometimes those outer extremities are harder for people to see. So like your hands, your feet, your head, they usually see your core where your jacket is and all that reflectivity, but maybe not your extremities. So we have a lighted beanie. Maybe you're working at night or in the dark and you want to have that extra light to see, or you just want others to see you. So the reflective beanie or the reflective winter neck gaiter could be great for you, just to have that full 360 reflectivity around you. If that is not as important for you, you could go just with a standard hat. You can see plenty of options on the right. We have skull cap liners, baseball hats, etc. Just depending on the type of conditions that you're working in. And if you ever want a specific recommendation based on where you live or the struggles that you might be dealing with, I'd be happy to help and give you a suggestion. Have you ever experienced frostbite on the job? So I hope when you're listening to this, the answer is no. But you may know somebody who has experienced it or someone who has come close. And typically, it's always the fingers. That's just where it typically happens. So we have lots of gloves to help prevent frostbite on the job. We have 3 on the left. You'll see all those coated waterproof gloves. They go from lightweight all the way up to a thicker coat. And then you can see on the other side, we have lots of different gloves based on the industry that you're working in. I would say the 825 WP, that's our most extreme that we have. So if you're working in really cold environments, it has a fleece liner and then the full outer glove, and it tightens and cinches on your wrist. So that could be an option for you if you're dealing with very cold environments. And lastly, on our warming side, warming accessories are great and important. We have everything from hand, toe, body, foot warmers. These are disposable, and it's just an easy option to grab before you go. So if you're not sure, maybe the heated vest wouldn't work for you because you couldn't recharge it. So this is an option where you could just have a bunch of hand warmers on the ready to go. Put them in your gloves, put them in your jacket, just an extra layer of defense. Okay, so I talked a bit about some products that you can wear on your body, but I didn't really touch on the feet. And I mentioned earlier, slip, trips, and falls is extremely crucial to try to avoid. That is where a lot of the injuries come from. There were 244,000 injuries in 2021 for slip, trips, and falls, but there were 20,000 ice, sleet, snow reported worker injuries. And typically, if somebody falls on the job, they're gone for over a month or just about a month. And that costs about $42,000 per claim or slip. So this is a really big amount of people that get affected by this every single year. And that's why we try to focus on this heavily, just because there are so many ways that you can mitigate slips, trips, and falls. The first one starts with making sure you're taking the correct amount of breaks and wearing the right PPE on your body so you're not getting confused and losing coordination. But also, we want to make sure that you have the right thing on the bottom of your foot to help avoid a slip. So what should you do if you're slipping, but you're moving from inside to outside? So maybe you are a truck driver, you are in your truck, you have to get out, walk through the icy, slippery environment, and then go back in your truck. So we have this really great chart that shows based on the environment that you're working in, you can see here, or what you're experiencing, slush, ice, snow, what type of product we would recommend. So we kind of put them into 2 categories. Traction devices with spikes and not spikes. So I'm going to go into that. Anything with a spike is going to be the best for glare ice. If you are experiencing ice more often than not, you want to be wearing spikes. But the issue with spikes is you can't wear these on normal floors. It will destroy a floor. So these are the options I recommend, again, if you are on glare ice. If you are going in your truck, this midfoot option might be best for you because you can easily slide the midfoot to the side of your boot and then you can walk inside. This midfoot is good for flat soled shoes, and this midfoot is good if you have a bit of a heel on your boot. And then, of course, we have all of our traditional styles here that have spikes. And like I said, these are awesome just depending on what size shoe you have. We have a full size guide that we can provide you to tell you which size we would suggest for you. If you do not want to wear spikes, you don't want to have to rotate it, you don't want to have to take it off. Again, you are potentially working inside and outside. We made a really great product a couple years ago where we partnered with Michelin to give a spikeless traction. So you can keep these on your shoe all day. You don't need to take them off. It's essentially like having a winter tire on the bottom of your foot. So it keeps added traction. It prevents slip, trips, and falls. Super important. It pushes all that snow and ice away from the center of your traction device out. So it's more surface area contacting the ground. And this is a really great product, like I said, if you are working inside and outside and you just want to have that extra traction. If you are somebody that works more with oil, gas, water, those type of slippery surfaces, we have an indoor option as well. So I've been to a food processing plant before where there's all sorts of interesting things on the ground, and this would be a great option for them because it's very easy to slip. And so this also moves away all of that liquid and things that are on the ground away from the traction device, so you have more added traction on the ground. So I kind of discussed a lot of different things here. This one focusing on what you wear on the bottom of your foot is critical and important. So again, if you have questions about which one that I would recommend based on what you're doing on a daily basis, I'm happy to help there. And last but not least, we have a lot of resources that can help with conversations, just giving more stats on the slips, trips, and falls and the cold stress. We have just showing all the different products that we have, how to layer, etc. And that is all I have, Samantha.
Well, that was a ton of information in such a short period of time. So I would encourage our audience, anybody listening, make sure that you reach out to the Ergodyne team, reach out to Claudia, reach out to us at Safeopedia. Make sure that you're getting in touch with the Ergodyne team to make sure that you're staying safe, you're staying warm, you have the right PPE for the job. Those infernal head caps, those were really, really cool. So glad to see we have some innovation coming out there.
For sure. Yeah, and
Uh,
I think, oh, sorry, you can go.
oh no, I was just gonna say, I think there's some really, really cool stuff, and I want to make sure that our audience is prepared because there was things that I didn't even know about. So, you got to reach out to the team.
For sure. And I think to your point, if I were to hone in on anything, preparation for
Hmm.
the winter season is key.
Hmm.
We tend to be reactionary, and once the snow hits or once you experience that first cold, then you want to order something, but sometimes it's too late.
Yep.
Somebody could have already experienced an injury, so
Yep.
it's important to be prepared ahead of time.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Yeah, it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. That's, the old saying. So,
For sure.
all right. Well, before we wrap it up today, Claudia, is there anything you want our audience to take away from today or keep top of mind so that they can be safe, they can be prepared?
I'd say what I just mentioned, always being prepared ahead of time is super crucial, and really keeping all of those illnesses and injuries and things to look for top of mind as this winter season is approaching. You want to make sure you're safe as well as the people around you. So if you can notice something before it becomes a major problem, that is critical. Of course, you want to be wearing the right PPE, but you want to be there for all the workers around you. Yeah.
Absolutely. And again, take a look at your screen, note all the collateral, all the videos that are there. There is a ton of things in the Ergodyne library, so make sure you're checking those out. And if you have any further questions, again, I encourage you to reach out to your nearest Ergodyne team member. All right, Claudia. Well, a huge thank you to you for being here today. Thank you to Ergodyne as well as AD Safety Network for allowing you to put this on today. And of course, I want to thank all of the dedicated safety professionals for the great work they do on a daily basis in keeping our workplaces safe, and the audience, because without you guys, none of this would be possible. So take care, stay safe, and remember, prevention is important. So keep an eye on that body temperature. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.